Hey guys, what's going on? It's Coach Tim. Today I want to talk about the basic flood concept. I know, especially for you young guys, we've been repping a lot of quick game, and I think that's important to start with the quick game and work your way up from there. Because if you can't execute on slants, hitches, slant arrow, hitch seam, if you can't hit those basics, then it's difficult to kind of move on and continue to play quarterback at a high level. But that being said, I know a lot of you young guys are being thrust into 7-on-7 at a very early age. And because of that, and because running those quick game concepts can kind of get boring in 7-on-7, and you guys got to push the ball down the field, a lot of you young guys are being asked to work much more advanced concepts than I think should be taught at this level. But at the same time, you guys are being asked and expected to do that. I'm gonna try and help you guys as much as I can to prepare you off the field for that, and then on the field when we get on the field again. Right now, talking basic flood concept. So I'm going to talk through a number of things, talking through how we're creating a numbers advantage, talk about the basic flood concept, talk about the triangle, and then from that, that's going to transition to the variations of flood, and then we're going to talk about how to implement it versus various coverages and how it kind of adjusts versus various coverages, and then finally, basically how to read it, high to low, low to high. Those are the main ways, and I'll kind of talk through the different pros and cons of those things. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll do a basic 2x2 set. Quarterback is in gun right now. So first you've got your clear out, and later we'll also call that an alert or a take. And then you've got your deep out. Sometimes it could be an option route, depending on how it's taught. This is usually about 10 to 12 yards. And then finally, you've got either a swing from the back, or back is going out to the flat. This is usually no more than 3 yards or so. So this is your basic flood concept. So when I talk about creating a numbers advantage, really what we're trying to do, and I'll oversimplify for a moment, what we're trying to do is typically take the corner out of the picture with a vertical, and then essentially pick on the flat defender. Now, if the corner's running away with the vertical, then it's pretty easy. Usually, for the most part, you're going to pick on the backer, who happens to be the flat defender in this case, most likely. There's other times where the corner will be the flat defender, other times where the safety might be the flat defender. But right now, we're going to oversimplify. We're going to say the corner's off, the safety's in the middle field, and now we're just picking on this backer and wherever he ends up. Again, we're trying to create a numbers advantage. So this kind of cancels itself out, and then we've got a 2-on-1, and the backer is going to end up there at some point, theoretically, during the play. And we're creating a 2-on-1 right here between this guy in the flat and this guy over here running the option or the out at about 10 to 12 yards. Again, creating a numbers advantage, that's what we're talking about first. Now we're going to go to basic flood, which I just drew up for you. Again, it's the clear out, usually by number 1. Sometimes it's a post. We'll talk about that later. Again, the second guys usually running an out, depending on alignment, personnel, blah, blah, blah. They may inside release and work to the out, or inside release and then work to kind of an option route. Down here, for the flat, it could be a number of things. It kind of depends on how the play is designed, the timing of it, the personnel. This might be, like I said, a flat. This might be a swing over here. It actually could also be a number 3 right here running an arrow or running a flat out here. So just kind of depends. There's a lot of different variations out of 2x2, 3x1, even guys coming from the backside. But for the most part, this is what flood looks like at its core principle. Now, this is basic flood. Now I'm going to talk about the triangle and why that's important. So when you look at this basic flood, there's a guy here, there's a guy that ends up here, and there's a guy that ends up here. So if I just leave those little bubbles there and I erase all of these other people and I leave the defenders here, what it does is it essentially shows that we're creating a triangle right here, right? And so for initially when I talked, we were kind of isolating this aspect. So it was 2-on-1. Really, flood and a lot of these other concepts are at least a 3-on-2 type progression. So if we're talking 3-on-2, there's usually a corner in the picture somewhere. Corner comes down, backer takes this. Okay, we hit that guy. Corner backs off, backer takes this, we hit this guy. Corner backs off, this guy takes this, we hit this guy type thing. So basically, their 2 guys shouldn't be able to cover our 3 guys as long as our spacing and our timing is good. So that's the whole triangle principle. So this is crucial to understand in flood, because once you understand flood at its core and what it's trying to do, now you can start understanding all these different variations. So this is really where you get into next level football, right? Because now instead of having a number 1 and a number 2 out here running the same patterns, I could run number 1 on the clear out. I could run number 2 on a whip to the flat, and then I can run this guy from the backside as this intermediate route on a cross. And so this is still flood. It looks different. I'm adding the guy from the backside, which is a little bit of a flare, but for the most part, this is still flood. And you can still read it and go through that progression in a pretty similar manner. The timing is going to be a little bit different, so you may have to scoot this guy in. Hopefully he's pretty fast. He can get there at right around the same time as number 2 would normally get there if he was running an option route or something like that. But this is how UCLA likes to run it, by the way. So they like to go low to high here because the backer gets drawn over here. He doesn't have another guy to worry about, and he doesn't see this guy coming from across the field. And you hit this guy in stride, and he's off to the races. So they like this play, and they get a lot of yak in this play. So I kind of picked that up from some of the coaches there. That was super helpful. So again, what we're talking about is variations of flood. So this is still flood. It may be called something slightly different, but it's still trying to accomplish the same things that flood wants to accomplish. Let's draw another way, or let's figure out another way we can run flood. So I've seen this before, and you can get really, really creative with how you run flood. I've seen this before where maybe you go stack or you go tight formation, and you have one guy kind of work inside and then break back out, almost like a deep whip route. Your clear out is almost like a wheel, and then you either have your swing over here or you have your flat over here. So again, just adding a little bit of flavor and spice to flood, but it's still flood at the end of the day. You still got a guy here, you still got a guy here, and you still got a guy here, and you're picking on this flat defender for the most part if you're going within to the flat or the out in this case. So again, just different variations. So I'm going to talk about why now. Before I move on, and I'll use this as an example, it's so important to have the correct spacing and timing in this play. Here's why, because a lot of times, and I'll kind of draw it down here for a second. A lot of times, and I've made this mistake before as a quarterback coach and an offensive coordinator, a lot of times you just draw this out for kids and they see it, and so they run it exactly how it's drawn up. Well, the way that this is drawn up, by the time this running back gets to this point, this guy's going to be at this point here. And so what's going to happen is they're going to continue moving along. This guy might be a little bit further, but at various points in time, this is kind of how they're lined up. And so if I throw a backer in the middle of this, now it makes it a little bit fuzzier who to throw to and who he's covering. because they're kind of stacked. They're almost stacked on top of each other relative to the line of scrimmage. Now, let's redraw that example with some better timing and spacing. If I can get this guy to go flat right now and get width, and I've got a number 2 here, inside releases on the backer, and then he either sits or he kind of slow plays that out, then this backer has to make a decision a lot quicker. And even if he doesn't make the decision and he waffles a little bit, it's a lot easier to make this decision as a quarterback to see, okay, where's this guy going? Because as a quarterback, your vision is in this realm right here, right? And so you're looking at it from this perspective. So if I'm looking at it from this perspective, to me, this backer, it's so much easier for me to see, okay, is he going this way or is he going that way, right? And so imagine for a second visually, if instead of the routes being separated here to here, they're separated here to here, now that passing lane isn't as big for each of these targets. And so now it's a little bit muddied in terms of what this guy is doing and who he's covering, right? Let's say my timing and separation is horrible, and now the out is over here, and the flat is late getting out, and it's here. So now this backer is sitting in between both of them, but to the quarterback, it's almost vertical. And so now it's a depth perception problem, in terms of who this guy is covering. And that's a lot harder to decipher for a person, is depth perception versus, okay, is he closer to this guy or is he closer to that guy? That's much simpler to decipher. So hopefully that makes some sense and you don't make that mistake. So the point of that was really to understand that it's so important for this guy to get out here first, because that creates this separation here. So you want this guy out here early, and you want this guy coming out here a little bit later to really draw that backer and put him in a huge conflict. And this makes it so much easier for the quarterback to read and make decisions when you have this type of separation. Because you got to think, if this is the sideline and let's say this is about the hash, this is a good, from here to here is a good, I want to say, 17 yards or so. And then, this is probably inside probably 5 to 7 yards. Now you're talking about 10 yards here, but he's also diagonal. So if you're stretching him diagonally, now you're talking probably 12, 13, 14 yards of separation for him to cover. And that's hard for him to cover when he's going sideways. So there's a little math for you. So my math teacher wife is happy that I'm using math in football. So I'm trying to keep her happy. Happy wife, happy life. Anyways, so we talked about variations of flood. Now let's talk about implementing against coverage, because I think that's so important. It's not good enough just to draw these up. We definitely have to talk about how they apply to coverages and how coverages are designed to stop it. So right now, let's talk about we'll talk about 2x2, and we'll talk safety rotation. So we got a corner, we got a backer inside here. And we've got 2x2, we got a running back out in the flat, and we've got an option route right here at about 10, 12 yards. So this is 10, 12 yards right here. This is still your alert / take / clear out. So right now, and I could probably spend several episodes talking about coverage and safety rotation and all those other things. So I know we've gone over that with a bunch of my guys. Let's not go over that here, but what I will give you is just the basics. So let's say the corner clears out here and we start seeing safety movement by this guy, right? So you see this guy backing off, this guy creeping up. Now you're trying to figure out, okay, if this corner backs off and you see safety movement here, then we know that one of these two guys is the flat defender. Now, if he's shading outside of this backer and this backer's way inside, now you're thinking he's going to roll down and he's going to end up being that flat defender that I should read. And then it's the opposite when it's buzz. So again, this is sky when that safety comes down to the flat. And when the backer goes to the flat and safety comes down to replace, that's typically called buzz. Okay, so in either case, what we're doing, or when the corner stays, it's called cloud. We'll talk about that in a second. But in either case, when you see safety movement here, then you should know that, hey, this guy's going back, and now whoever's the outside most defender besides the corner underneath is going to end up being that flat defender, and that's who I should read. So this is really important because it speeds up your decision making as a quarterback. If I understand pre-snap, hey, this is the look that I'm getting pre-snap. If I'm the quarterback, this is the hash. Let's say this is the hash, and I've got a safety starting to creep over here, and I've got a lower safety starting to shift wider. Okay, then it's either going to be cloud where he goes here and the corner sits, or it's sky where he comes down and the corner bails. So either way, I've started to narrow my decision making down to say, okay, it's not the backer I need to be worried about. It's one of these two guys. And then as you take the snap and take your drop, I can see, is the safety coming down or is he flying out? And then that'll tell me, okay, is it going to end up being this guy or is it going to end up being this guy? So that's so important because that's where your eyes need to go instead of taking the drop and then trying to figure out of these three guys, which one. You should be able to already start eliminating and simplifying your decision making and focusing where your eyes go based on the pre-snap alignment of the defense. So, just little nuggets about that and how it may impact who you go to. So, for example, if it's Sky and this guy's coming down, but he could be flying down really fast, or he can kind of be slow playing it. So in this case, if he's slow playing it, he's still ending up at 10 yards here, and he's trying to sit on the out. Okay, you already know, hey, I'm going to go to this first. Or even if I'm reading high to low, he's sitting here, I know I'm probably going to end up taking that because this backer's not going to get out there and the corner's bailing. So I just need to keep him here and then go ahead and hit that. Or you can bait him and say, as he's coming down, I can look over here. He may try and turn and jump that, and that's going to open up your passing lane right here. So again, just different ways that Flood will start to adjust and change your decision making or adjust your decision making versus different types of coverage. So that being said, I'll move on to my last point here, which is talking about how we want to read it. And so let me redraw these real quick. So when we're talking about reading reading these concepts, that by itself could be a whole nother topic for another day, but I'll make it simple for now. So again, we've got our option route, we've got our clear out. So when we're reading guy, let's say it's the back route here that ends up in the flat. When we're reading this, typically, especially for younger guys, I like teaching low to high. And so we're reading low to high, we're reading this guy to this guy, and then eventually to this guy once you guys feel comfortable and you have the arm strength to hit that. But let's ignore that for a second. Right now we're talking about low to high, flat to the option or the out. So in this case, as you take your drop, you're in gun, so you go in 3-step in gun, take the ball, boom, 1, 2, 3, and you're eyeing over here. And really what you're looking for is this guy turning and running out here as fast as he can? Because if he's turned his hips and he's starting to run out here, and I should really draw where he is pre-snap. Pre-snap, he's probably going to be lined up right over number 2. He might be inside, might be head up, might even be outside, but he's somewhere around here. So as this guy comes out of the backfield and gets out here fast, right, is he running out here and clearing that window? If he turns and runs out here, you're still looking at this first, but if he turns and runs, he vacates this window for you right here. Boom, you take your hitch, you take your 1, 2, 3, and then you hitch and you hit that on time, hopefully. So that's low to high. Again, if he doesn't start sprinting out there and he kind of waffles or he kind of tries to shuffle a little bit and widen out, okay, you go ahead and hit this on the outside shoulder, and now you've got a running back who's hopefully faster than this backer. You put that ball on his outside, he's off to the races getting you yak. So that's low to high. High to low essentially is almost the same thing. Here's where the difference between low to high and high to low is, okay? The difference is this: if this guy tries to waffle in between, so he's like half running and he doesn't quite beat this guy out there, but he's also kind of not quite fully clearing this window. Okay, this is where the high to low and the low to high differentiate themselves. Low to high in this situation is I'm taking this unless he takes it away. So if he's kind of waffling and he hasn't fully taken away, then you hit that. If he's not, if it's high to low and he's kind of waffling over here, then you hitch and you take this and hopefully you throw it outside of his reach and range. So to me, that's where the difference is. And if you don't teach it like that, then I think the problem that you start running into, especially for young guys, is indecision, because what if this guy kind of sits in between both guys? And if you haven't taught them high to low or low to high, now they're sitting there trying to figure out, okay, do I throw it to this guy or do I throw it to this guy? When if you told them this first and then this, or this first and then this, it makes the decision making a lot clearer and a lot simpler and a lot more straightforward. So now they can play faster without thinking. So that's the way I would teach it. Again, we've been isolating this. Now let's talk about the clear out route. If I'm going low to high, same thing here. Okay, now let's add the corner into the picture, because again, it's a 3-on-2 that we're trying to focus on here. So if I'm adding this, I have to add the corner into the whole equation right now. So when we have, when we're going low to high, so 1, 2 to the clear out. So let's say corner comes down and takes this. Okay, so now my eyes move to number 2. And let's say the backer is sitting here. I need to be able to go and hit this quickly before this safety flies over. Now, in this case, if the corner comes up, then it's one of two things have happened. Either they're in too high and the safety's flying over, and you got to hit this hole shot right now, as soon as you can, or he's in the middle of the field and it was a cover 3 look, and this corner didn't do his job and bit, and so now you got a huge window to be able to throw it. But either way, low to high, this is a much more difficult throw because it's so much later and further down the field. That ball is going to be in the air longer. That gives that safety more time to get over there and recover. So that's why, especially for the older guys, I probably wouldn't do, or I'm sorry, for the younger guys, I probably wouldn't do low to high with this added in. Now, I like it if you've got the arm strength to hit that quickly, and you can process the information quickly. But that's, again, for probably the older guys. Now, let's talk about high to low. Now, in high to low, again, option route. So now you're going 1, 2 to 3. Now, in this case, again, this is an alert, and I haven't talked too much about alerts because to me it's a little bit more advanced, but this is one of those timing routes where you hit on time. So if you're in gun, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, put your foot in the ground and hit that without a hitch if it's there. That's only if you see the situation where the corner is still squatting, okay, and that safety is not going to get over there in time. So it's just like a hole shot in like fade out, like fade quick out versus cover 2 type deal. So it's that same hole shot. It happens really, really quickly. So you got to be super decisive to say, okay, I'm going to put my foot in the ground if this guy blows by this corner and I've got separation. So usually this is I would say 15 to 18 yards, pretty much at the sideline type throw, so that you can maximize the distance the safety has to travel. So that's high to low. So let's say that he doesn't do that and he waffles, or he tries to back off, or he's playing soft. Okay, so then now that's no longer there. Now our eyes come down to this backer who's probably sitting somewhere around here in the flat. So now he takes that. Okay, we're throwing that, right? He backs off here. We're throwing that. So again, high to low. 1, 2, and I'm seeing is he here in the passing lane, and I'm looking for color. I'm looking for any type of guy that slides over, like inside backer possibly slides over, who knows. Hopefully it won't happen if this guy runs his route correctly and you've got good spacing and timing. You're going to have this type of passing lane right here with this backer here. So alert here, you're going to eye the corner, see if he squats or see if he bails, Then we're going to get our eyes to here and see, okay, what is this backer doing? Is he in the way or not? If he's not, we're taking this and we're threading this needle right here. If he's sitting here, then we're going to reset, hitch out here, and make this check down throw where because if we're making this throw, that means he's probably 10, 15 yards away. We're making this throw, ball gets there, he's getting us yak. He ends up getting the same yardage as this would have gotten us if we threw this and he got tackled. So again, this isn't necessarily a bad decision. And in a lot of cases, it's going to get you that yak as long as you throw an accurate ball to the outside. He can use his momentum, turn up field, and go, and we had the separation that we wanted originally. So I know it's a little bit messy. I'm pretty much at the end here, so I'm going to make one last point for you guys. So thank you guys for sticking with me through this video. So talked about creating a numbers advantage. We talked about basic flood. We talked about the triangle. Talked about variations of flood, talked about implementing against coverage. We talked about high to low and low to high and the various differences. I'll make one last point, which is this. In low to high and high to low, to me, and this goes back to my philosophy of preparing quarterbacks, I think it's so important to make quarterbacks as flexible as possible and adapt to different types of situations. Not everything goes right in a football game, and not every play caller is the same. Not every offensive scheme is the same. Not every head coach or offensive coordinator is the same. And so because of that, I think it's so important to learn and practice both of these methods of reading low to high and high to low, and being able to adjust quickly based on those. You may have a coach that says, okay, I want to read everything low to high, all their concepts, and that's fine. But I also think that the really, really great quarterbacks understand when it makes more sense to read high to low and when it makes more sense to read low to high. What are these situations? Well, let's talk about it real quick. I would say third and like 1 to 2, for example, probably want to read high to low. Why not take that flat? Because we only need 1 or 2 yards, and that's a 2 to 3 yard route typically. So, and that's usually a much higher percentage throw. So let's go ahead and take that and read this low to high. That doesn't mean I just take the ball and throw it to the flat no matter what. That just means I'm going to take this higher percentage, shorter throw first because that's typically what the defense is going to give up, is the underneath throws, right? Versus if it's 3rd and 12, then guess what? I probably want to read this high to low instead of low to high. Yes, is it possible that the check down is going to give me 12 yards? Possibly, but now you're kind of risking things. So in this case, maybe you want to read it high to low. So again, if you've practiced this and you have that flexibility and you can adapt, then I think you're going to be a really, really good quarterback that's ahead of the game and understands when to switch, how to read it based on the situation, down and distance, game situation. Is it 4th down? Is it 3rd and long, 3rd and short, 4th and short? Because that definitely changes things. So the great NFL quarterbacks will change how they read based on these different situations, even though they're running the same exact concepts. So again, we covered flood, and I should have covered this in the introduction. That's my fault. Flood it's a very basic football concept. I think you'll see it at all levels of football. You'll see it in the NFL. You may not see the basic flood that we talked about, which is deep out, and a flat and a clear out. But you're going to see elements of that if you look very, very carefully and you start breaking down the film. You're going to see a lot of similarities to flood. They, in the NFL, they'll dress it up with different personnel and alignments and motions and everything. But at the end of the day, they're still running a lot of the same stuff that you guys are getting taught at all levels of football. So with that, I will go ahead and call it a day. Thank you guys so much for listening, and good luck.